Welcome back. Uh, hello, those surprise. I decided to get back on my podcast today. I'm inspired to talk about a couple things. Um, so, welcome. For those that are just tuning into this podcast for the first time, I am Brooke Brown, your host of Turning Topics with BB. If you see, check out Turning Topics with BB podcast.com for all episodes and everything related to this podcast, including the social media links, would be helpful. And if you enjoy this podcast, please remember to leave a rating or comment where you can, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. That helps this podcast be found by other listeners such as yourself. So I appreciate all of those that have left comments and supported this podcast and give me the 5-star rating on my Apple Podcast. I really appreciate it. This podcast has been around for over a decade, a labor of love and hobby that I continue to do. So thank you so much to everybody out there that has been wondering what is going on and why I haven't been podcasting for quite some time. So before I get into what I'm inevitably going to talk about, I do want to talk about the life part of the title of this podcast. I've been going through some personal issues for the last few months, and work, my day job has been interesting. And so for my mental health, I decided to take a hiatus from this podcast. Even though I talk about mental health in this podcast many times, it wasn't, it was starting to not be fun. And I really hope to keep this podcast fun and to bring on more guests. I do have some lineup for later this year that I'm excited to chat with, that I've been wanting to chat for years. And there's some really exciting stuff coming up. So hopefully you'll stick around for those episodes coming up. But without getting too into the nitty gritty, I went through some stuff, which led me down a wrong path of some stuff, and I had to take some break, get my head right. It's still not great, but as long as I have music and events, I mean, it is concert season. It's back after the pandemic, so that's exciting. There's so much. I've already been to 2 shows in the last 48 hours. And then I have 2 more at the end of this month. Then I have 1 next month. So it's just picking up because that's one of my hobbies and a trending topic, if you will. So thank you to everybody who listens to this podcast. You'll listen to this in the future, whether you're watching this stream, whether you're watching this in video form on the replay once it's recorded, or whether you just solely listen to the podcast in audio form. I really appreciate those that have been sticking by this podcast. I'm a very small podcast in a world of podcasting right now. Oh, I will say, in my day job, I also ended up launching a internal podcast there. So I was working on that podcast and getting it launched. It's a internal podcast that it's actually been in the making for almost 2 years. And I finally got it launched this last week. So we'll see how that continues. And so that's kind of what I've been up to. I don't really want to go into too much details, a little personal life shit going down. So enough of that. But I did want to come in and talk about the 2 shows I've been to in the last 48 hours because they've been a long time coming. So let's talk about the fact that I'm a huge Coldplay fan. Fun fact, their track "Fix You" is not only my favorite track from their entire catalog, and they have an amazing catalog, it is also my all-time favorite song in life. Because the meaning behind the song of why Chris Martin and the group wrote it is deep, but it also pertains to a lot of my mental health struggles. I suffer from anxiety and depression and, well, really like OCD. So that song just speaks to when you lose somebody or you lose something. Just listen to the lyrics. It's a really deep song. You've probably heard it a million times because it was one of their biggest hits, but it's now performed in a live setting. It's unparalleled. Their live version of "Fix You" is just insanely beautiful. And yeah, so when concerts were being announced coming back, like everybody and their brother, whether they were touring before the pandemic or not in the music industry, basically decided, hey, it's 2022 or 20, it started in 2021. Um, we're going to announce big tours and just, I mean, the live music. I don't think there's an artist that hasn't even retired that it hasn't come out of the pandemic, with a new album or intentions to do their farewell tours or the last time around or reunite with a member that they weren't touring with 20 years ago or wherever it may be right now. It seems like the pandemic taught people that, like, oh, so a plague can stop the world. And so let's get over our shit and create art and music and performance and escapism. Um, and appeal to basically every demographic, every age you can imagine by this. So when last year Coldplay released, or the year before, they released an album called Everyday Life. They did not tour it. They did like 2 or 3 shows. It was a deep album. Um, and then they announced that they were in a new era called A Music of the Spheres. It's a new album, and that they were going to tour. And the last time I saw Coldplay was on their Head Full of Dreams tour. Was the last major stadium tour they had, which was in 2017, 2016 and 2017. Now the first leg in 2016, I missed it when they came through Phoenix. I don't know how I missed it, but I did. It sold out before I could get a ticket, and I was pretty bummed. And then they announced that they were going to do it in a second leg, and my closest option was to go to Pasadena, California, the LA area. So I did, and it was at the Rose Bowl. And pretty much all my life I had wanted to go to a Coldplay concert because I've heard that they're just spectacles of performance and production, and straight up, it did not disappoint. Even if you're the fair weathers of Coldplay fans, you would love anybody that goes to a Coldplay show gets it, because that's what goes in. That's what you need to see at like every concert. The They were probably one of the first bands, if not the first, that when you walk in through the doors at their concerts, they hand you a wristband and they tell you to wear it. What that wristband does is that during the concert to the music, it lights up. So not only do they have pyrotechnics and lasers and stage productions, the entire crowd has their own little wristband, which I have mine. I don't know why I'm not showing you. I kept it. You're actually supposed to send it back. But anyway, and during the concert, it lights up. And when there's 40 to 60,000 people in a stadium with that going, and you're just fucking partying and rating and enjoying the time, and like, it's a dopamine release like you wouldn't even know. It's euphoria. I get that going to concerts anyway, because being with like-minded people listening to great tunes is kind of like my life. But the Coldplay aspect takes it on another level, because of those wristbands, because of just everybody who's there, either whether it's their first time or their 10th time seeing them, is having a good time. Um, and so they announced that they were coming to Phoenix, back to Phoenix, on this new Music of the Spheres tour, because they announced after their last tour that Coldplay's a very they want to do a lot of change. They're very giving back um, band. They love partnering up with charities, and one of their biggest things over the years has been for climate change, because as they've traveled around the world, they see the issues with it. And I know, well, I'm not trying to get into the political debate of whether you believe in it or not. Let's all agree that we're killing our own Earth. I mean, it's a fact. Whether you believe in the name global warming or climate change, I don't fucking care. What I care about is that they're trying to do something with their platform, because They play stadiums every time, and it sells out. 40 to 60,000 people each show. They're one of the top most selling tours artists of the last 20 to 30 years. Even bigger than who you think, like even bigger than a Kiss or a U2. I mean, they're up there kind of close with U2. Uh, you name it, who plays in stadiums, not arenas, stadiums, and they basically they sell out every show. Well, whatever a sellout is. I mean, obviously there's behind in a stadium, and if it's a bowl situation, the seats behind the stage aren't sold, so take those out. But um, everything else, even from the floor around the, you can get floor seats, but you're not seats because it's standing room only. All general admission, all the way up to what people call nosebleed, uh, packed. And the other night here in Phoenix, no other. It was. They played at State Farm Stadium, where the Arizona Cardinals play, which that venue, they don't have very many concerts at that venue every year. They're having 3 this year, and I believe it's Coldplay, which happened, and then they're having, I think, Guns N' Roses, maybe, and then The Weekend. That's it. The rest is for the football games, or it's empty. And there's other, obviously, venues here in Phoenix, but that are smaller. But, granted, scheduling permitting, and they can do everything. So my point uh, is that this time around, I wanted to try the floor experience, because the last time around I had a seat. It was phenomenal. But this time around, I was like, wouldn't it be cool to be like right as close as possible to the band? um, and so when they announced it and tickets went on sale, and getting a floor seat right away, hands down, probably the cheapest for one of those seats. I keep saying seats. We didn't sit. We sat on the ground. But it was worth every penny. It was only, I think it was like $150 for the ticket plus fees. I mean, it's Ticketmaster. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole of why Ticketmaster and Live Nation suck, but everybody uses them. Go to John Oliver last week tonight. He has a whole thing about that. But anyway, moving on. I basically was like, oh yeah, I'll take a half day of work, because I know I got to queue up for GA, which means stand in line to try to get the best possible thing. I still have a life, and I still had to do work. So by the time I got there, which was still early, by the way, it was like 4 hours before the concert, I was late. There was people who had been camping out since the morning. So I couldn't do that. I did have to put in a half day at work, my day job. But anyway, the point is, it didn't matter. Then we got in line, and we waited around, and more people showed up, and everybody was just chit-chatting about how excited the Coldplay is, if this is the first, second, third, whatever experience. Getting to meet a family that is like a Coldplay family. They're like, yeah, our child's only seen Coldplay, which is going to ruin her for concerts for the rest of her life, because she's going to go to other concerts and be like, well, wasn't that like a Coldplay show? But nevertheless. So basically, this concert, the whole experience, the lines waiting for your wristbands and your floor access band and security and scanning your ticket and all that stuff, and the hurry up and wait, basically, because they, by the time everybody kind of got through to get wristbands and stuff, and they got us to one part of the venue, we still had to wait for a while. But then the crowd was starting to get rowdy, and the crew and the people working at the stadium were walking by, and everybody was having a good time, just kind of passing the time until they let us in. But then when they let us in, it was like a friggin' stampede, because everybody wanted to be right where they wanted to be by the stage, which I don't agree with. So I try to keep myself safe. Um, but then you realize, okay, yeah, they have the main stage, then they have a long walkway to like the middle of the floor area, and then they also have a C stage, which I ended up standing by, which they play like a couple intimate songs to try to get closer to the back of the crowd all around. And so I ended up making some friends from Mexico and hanging out and getting a good shot and basically being within like a few feet of Coldplay. Never didn't plan ahead. So basically, the moral of the story is if I'm a person who's like, if I want to see a concert and whether or not somebody's going to go with me, it's not a factor because it's the music, it's the experience. It's more fun to go with friends or family. Uh, but I was not going to miss them coming to Phoenix because it's in my backyard, basically. Well, Glendale. Um, so basically, it's epic. If you go to my social media, my personal social media, which uh, if you don't know, um, I am at sexy15 everywhere you can find me, even TikTok. Although it's TikTok, I'm on official sexy15, but I rarely use TikTok. It's just I have it. Um, you'll see some highlights of pictures and videos that I took of Coldplay. Uh, and they had to postpone their LA shows for some reason. So if those get rescheduled, not gonna lie, I may go. Funding and scheduling permitting. The thing is, they're I as much as I'm describing this and explaining how amazing it was for me, you really don't get a sense of it until you go yourself. So if you want to join me, and I know you personally, uh, hit me up because every time I ran into some friends, I'm like, "Oh, I can't believe you went. I would have loved to go." I invited people, and then they're like, "I've always wanted to see them." That's my point. Is that you always hear that I've always wanted to see Coldplay. And once you do, it changes you forever. So I could ramble on and on and on more about Coldplay. To the one viewer that's watching this live, thank you. To those that'll watch this in replay, thank you, and enjoy this in the audio form of all my rambling because I haven't podcasted in a while. Thank you. All right, now on to Claude VonStroke, which was last night. Well, till this morning. So, for those that don't know, I go on an annual cruise now called the Groove Cruise. It took me 5 years, 3 attempts of booking and canceling before I could actually get on the ship in 2020, and then the world shut down. And then I went this year in 2022 because I didn't have it in 2021 because we were still going through the pandemic, blah, 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 blah. But the Groove Cruise is the first and premier world's electronic dance chartered music cruise. It's 4 days of nonstop music. Some of the who's who in electronic dance music, some that are residents that go every year on every iteration, because they do have a West Coast and an East Coast, unless it's canceled because of other circumstances like what we just went through. And so this past one in January, which was a few months ago, I knew they have a big roster of, and the best thing about the Groove Cruise is that they have a huge roster of headliners, but then there's people that aren't considered headliners, so then you can go to their sets. The Groove Cruise solves every logistical problem that you have at a music festival, like an EDC or an Ultra. I know because I've been to EDC, which you go once, but then that's it because it's a nightmare. Some people go every year, that's their thing, whatever. But what I love about the Groove Cruise is not only is a vacation, you're going to some place fantastic, you're on a cruise ship. It's an intimate setting to the point that like you're hanging out with your favorite artists as well as your people you go with. Everybody's there to have a good time. It's all about good vibes. This year there was a lot of stress leading up to it because we had to do COVID testing, we had to be vaccinated, we had to wear masks getting on the ship. It was a whole thing. I mean, if you tested positive within 48 hours of the ship, you couldn't get on it. So it was very stressful this year getting on, but it was something that we as Groove Cruisers needed. even the people that was going to be their first Groove Cruise. And the last night of the Groove Cruise was the Dirty Bird stage. Now, Dirty Bird is a record label owned and curated by DJ and producer Claude VonStroke. Now, Claude VonStroke in house music has just been gaining popularity. And the Dirty Bird brand, because they have their own they have their own little camp outs and camp ins. One's in California, one's in Orlando, Florida. Excuse me. A little emotional here. And basically this tech house movement that's going throughout electronic dance music has just kind of brought people together. Like me, I love house. I love techno. My first love was trance. As you see the trance flags right there. Oh my God, I can't point. But the last night, they had a Dirty Bird stage where it was just friends of Claude VonStroke, because each kind of little record has their own little stage on either if they're a record label or or like artists they put on stages on the Groove Cruise. And so then there was Gene Ferris, who's a house legend who was on the cruise, who I had missed one of his longer sets the day before because I was at somebody else's set. Whatever. Basically tore the place down of amazingness for the last night. And I've loved Claude VonStroke from afar for years. But until I heard his set on the Groove Cruise and the vibes, and apparently if you watched one of my previous episodes, my friends Disco Pretty, who are resident Groove Cruise DJs, we talk about this because they had their own little party in the casino, and it turns out that Claude VonStroke really loved the vibes that they're bringing, and then joined their stuff, and it became a thing on the Groove Cruise. So my point is when I heard that he was coming to Phoenix for an open to close. Now, let me talk about the Phoenix scene. We rarely have a situation where electronic dance artists come to Phoenix and do an open to close, whatever that means. Usually in the city, it's like whenever the club opens to close, which is usually here, last call at about 2 a.m. In other cities like Miami and other places in LA and certain places, they have an open to close could literally be when the sun rises, but we don't have that here. I mean, I've traveled for that experience, but we don't get that here. So anyway, this brand new venue called Walter Warehouse has been making waves because when raving and dance music started, it started in warehouses, and it was having a space to dance and connect with people. And then it went into clubs, which became more about selling alcohol and just not big enough venues to dance, because when they pack it in, you can't really move. And the whole point of electronic dance music is to dance, not just stand there and do this like a Night at the Roxbury, which is funny movie, but not the point. So I immediately bought tickets right after getting off the Groove Cruise to Claude VonStroke when it was announced for this open to close. And that was 2 or 3, 4 months ago. And it finally happened last night. And let me tell you, not only is the venue perfect for that type of journey of music, because an open to close, when a DJ does an open to close, it's about the journey of the night and feeding off the energy of the crowd and vice versa. And it's epic. Because most of the time when people come to Phoenix, they have a few openers, and then the headliner goes on, and they only usually play about an hour and a half. It used to be 2 hours, but now it's like an hour and a half. And you really just get a taste of what that artist is trying to convey. But when it's an open to close and you have like 6 hours, nothing compares. I mean, I've done 12 hours with Marcus Schultz, but that's another podcast. So basically, it was a no-brainer. And it did not disappoint. It was a journey from the moment the doors opened till close or around close when I was leaving to beat the traffic. But it was epic. I've just needed this cathartic release the last few days of going to shows because I've been stressed out and having my life, personal life, interesting stuff go down. So as I'm almost at 30 minutes of rambling about what has been going on, I did want to talk about these two things. They are trending topics in my world. If you enjoy more, maybe I'll talk about it more in depth again. But thank you to everybody who has watched this live, who will watch this, who will listen to it, who will rate, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And I hope everybody stays healthy, safe, and I'll check you later on the next episode, which may or may not have a guest. Stay tuned.